Why were there so many punctures in Qatar? We saw a lot of tyres go pop at the end of the race this weekend. Of course, it adds another element of drama to the race, but in an ideal world, they shouldn't happen. Let's dive into the reasons why some of the tyres just didn't fancy being attached to the car anymore. Heading to a new circuit is always going to be a challenge. With no previous experience or data to go off, educated presumptions need to be made by those up and down the grid after the allocated 3 practice sessions. However, someone who has to make decisions well ahead of time and without the benefit of these practice sessions is tyre supplier Pirelli. Having been F1's sole tyre supplier since 2011, Pirelli has a great deal of experience picking tyre compounds for new venues on the F1 calendar. For Qatar, they picked the 3 hardest tyre compounds, which will be the final time this season that they're selected. The white C1 were the hard tyres, the yellow C2 became the mediums, and finally the red C3 were the softs. Why were these compounds chosen, Matt, I hear you ask? Well, from plenty of simulations and some existing data, it was very clear that this Losail International Circuit was going to feature some tough asphalt as well as very demanding corners. Being in a desert, sand might also impact the grip levels. In their race preview, Pirelli listed characteristics of the track that could influence how the tyres behaved. They included the long kilometre straight as well as the 16 corners, which means the tyres are always working hard, and this is expected to lead to a reasonably high degree of degradation. There were also no support races this weekend, which means no extra rubber could be laid down. After Saturday's qualifying, Pirelli shared their thoughts on what teams should do for race day. The optimal strategy for the 57-lap Qatar Grand Prix should be a 2-stopper, their press release said. A 1-stopper is still not advised though, just because tyre wear appears to be quite high. That last point is rather important, as several teams decided to go against the advice of the tyre supplier and try a 1-stop. We all know how that ended, don't we? Puncture after puncture. In the end, 4 drivers experienced punctures during the inaugural Qatar Grand Prix. Valtteri Bottas, Lando Norris, George Russell and Nicholas Latifi. One thing that was common among the drivers that suffered punctures was the rate at which it happened. Nobody seemed to expect it, they just went boom. All 4 punctures were on the front left tyres, which is because it was the most stressed tyre on the circuit. Nevertheless, Pirelli's head of racing, Mario Isola, told Sky Sports F1 that the reason why we had just punctures on the front left needs to be investigated. All the tyres were quite worn, he explained. We have cuts on the tyres which we need to understand if they were caused before the loss of pressure or after the loss of pressure. We are waiting for telemetry data from the teams that is a really important element to understand if the loss of pressure was sudden. Several teams did make the 1-stop work though, including Mr. Fernando Alonso, who made El Plan work and got himself on the podium for the first time in 104 races. There you have it, an insight into why we saw so many punctures in Qatar. Do you think the teams have any leg to stand on if Pirelli's advice was not to do a 1-stop? Let us know in the comment section below.